And welcome to Rogue Reads, a show hosted by the Rogue Women Writers, which is a group of I don't know if I can curse like FAA regulations, kick butt women thriller writers. And tonight this is a show, I say this all the time, but I've been especially excited for this show, where we will be speaking with Nekesa Afia, Tracy Clark, Riley Sager, and Paul Doiron, who all have new exciting books that I know our thriller and suspense and mystery fans are going to be so excited to get to know. You may, if you were lucky enough to get to be live in the Zoom room, you can enter a question into the chat, and we will do our absolute best to get to it. You can also watch this program later on YouTube, and I believe it's going to be streamed live on Facebook as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce tonight's guests to you. Let's start, we're going to go in alphabetical order. I've been talking about this all night, and now I'll definitely mess it up. We're going to start with Nekesa Afia, who is 24 years old, and when she finished her bachelor's in journalism, she published her first novel called Dead, Dead Girls. It's a great title, by the way. Nekesa minored in English, and she's a publishing student. Beautiful cover, love it. And I have to read this part because it's just so warm and humanizing. When she isn't writing, Nekesa is dancing, sewing, and of course, trying to pet every dog she sees.
As I love dogs.
So Dead, Dead Girls, an exciting new historical mystery series set during the Harlem Renaissance. And this is what I'm gonna, read the description because you can't do it better than this. Harlem, 1926, young Black women are ending up dead. Sounds like a mystery. Louise spends her days working at Maggie's Cafe and her nights at the Zodiac, Harlem's hottest speakeasy. When a girl turns up dead in front of the cafe, Louise is forced to confront something she's been trying to ignore. After an altercation with a police officer gets her arrested, Louise can either help solve the case or wind up in a jail cell. She soon finds herself head to toe with a murderous mastermind hell-bent on taking more lives, maybe even her own. It's a gripping description. I would love to hear a little bit about Dead, Dead Girls, just in your own words, what that description didn't give. And then we'll ask a few questions of Nekesa.
Perfect. So yeah, I've been describing it as a tiny, tired lesbian who's forced to solve crime. I really do love the Prohibition era just because it's so fun. There's all this art, there's all this music, there's all this dancing, but also alcohol's illegal and you can't buy it, but you totally can if you know where to look. Prohibition was a huge flop. Thank you. I really love unsolved cases and true crime. So I based the main case in this book off Jack the Ripper, which is of course still unsolved. And yeah, I just really wanted to write a novel starring a Black woman like me who is gay and likes to not solve crime, but then is forced into it.
Yeah, I love it. The call to action and then no choice but to follow it or heed it. I forgot to say, on Rogue Women Writers and Rogue Reads, we love to talk about our favorite drinks and snacks. Nekesa's is gin and Coke, yeah?
Yeah.
So raise a glass to Louise. So you kind of touched on this, and I have been fascinated by it ever since reading your bio and about your book. You said you always wanted to, kind of write. You minored in English and you're studying publishing, but tell us about this journey. I mean, I don't want to I think it's okay because it's the opposite of ageism, but I'm just dazzled by the fact that you did this. And, how at 24, how? It's right there in your bio, so I can ask, right?
So that bio was a little outdated. I don't know where it comes from. I've been trying to fix it, but that was a couple years ago. So I'm 26 now, but that doesn't change the fact that I have a book out at 26. It's fine. But so I was writing this novel in my senior year of history as my National Novel Writing Month project. And it was 2016, November 2016. So it's writing it. So it's getting up at 6 a.m. It's I'm going to write for an hour. No, it's getting up at 4. Then it's going to write an hour. Then it's going to go to school. Then I did my schoolwork at school. Then I came home and did my homework. Then I wrote for another hour before I went to bed. So I was surviving on literally no sleep. But it's fine because when you write a novel in a month, it could be absolute garbage, and it totally is. And then I had the time of my life just kind of going through and reworking and rewriting. I I started swing dancing so I could get more into the dance scenes. I started like sewing clothes that were like from the 1920s, and like I really did my best to like immerse myself in the 1920s culture, and then the rest of it was just luck. I have a great agent, I have a great editor. I'm really lucky that way.
Yeah, well, let's unpack that a little. I mean, first of all, we have a lot of aspiring writers always joining us for Rogue Reads. So those of you who are out there, Nano, Rhinemo, I can't say it, but that big part of your impetus. So that's great in of itself. And then, yeah, the next subject I wanted to touch on was the research, which you said you like immersed yourself. You did sort of a, what do you call it, like a meta kind of life. But tell us more about that. You studied the dancing and you made the clothes, but you know, what was life like during that time when you were immersing yourself in 1920s?
It was really weird. So the thing is that like when you're writing a historical novel, you're going to try to immerse yourself into a world and like put yourself into a character that's so different than like your daily life. So Lou's like 94 years older than I am, if I'm doing that math right. So like she has a completely different life. She is the oldest of her siblings. She gets to just work at a cafe and totally vibe all day, whereas I have to go to school and then I have to like, and I spend all my time on Twitter. She doesn't have that. She is so lucky for not having Twitter. And it's just like even all the tiny things that like go into a life, like that's what you have to research. So I'm like, what was the weather like over the summer of 1926? What would she wear? Where would she work? What would she drink? What would she eat? What would she dance to? What would she read? What would she write? What could her girlfriend do? Where could they live? It's absolutely everything. And it's like, it's stuff that you don't think, like, it's stuff you really just take for granted, but you gotta research it. You gotta research it.
Yeah, I admire it. And I'll let all you authors know, Riley and Paul and Tracy, I'm going to ask the research question of everybody. It figures in different ways to your work. And I think it's fascinating. Thank you, Nekesa. All right. So just last question before we, kind of mix and juggle our things up. Mystery as a genre. I'm really interested in how that particular genre spoke to you. It's a series, right? We're going to see Louise again. So can you talk to us just a little bit about the traditional mystery series?
Yeah, so I've always like really loved like the classic mysteries. When I was in 8th grade, I switched schools and like I had to take a school bus. So I was reading a lot of Nancy Drews to the point where everybody called me Nancy Drew instead of like Nekesa. So yeah, so I've always loved the idea of like a puzzle, and that's all a mystery is. It's a puzzle. It has all these pieces and you have to put it together. Some of them are unsolved, which makes me really mad. Some of them are solved, which also makes me mad because people commit crimes. And hate people who commit crimes. They're bad. And yeah, it's just like putting all the pieces together to like just like make the story and like make the picture whole. That's something I really love, and like that's probably why I was like drawn to crime in the first place. And yeah, it's just like kind of figuring out like how you kill someone with and get away with it. Disclaimer, I've never killed someone for my research. I feel like I have to say that. Hello, my FBI person. Sorry. Yeah, so it's just like the puzzles and like the clues. I love the puzzles.
The puzzle aspect. Yeah, I'm always interested in which mystery authors come to it from the puzzle aspect. And yeah, everybody who's out there who has any ties to law enforcement, don't worry about Nekesa's search history or anybody's search history on this Zoom call. We get it out on the page. So thank you, Tracy. I'm going to read your bio. And Tracy Clark is the author of the Cass Raines Chicago Mystery Series, an Anthony Lefty and Seamus Award finalist. She is also the winner 2020 of the G.P. Putnam Son Sue Grafton Memorial Award. Sue, may she rest in peace. What a wonderful honor. Tracy serves on the boards of Mystery Writers of America Midwest, Sisters in Crime Chicagoland, and Bouchercon International. Her new book out at the end of this month is called Runner. And again, a great description. I'll just read it and then let Tracy, you can keep holding it up while we talk about it.
That's right, that's enough.
Former homicide cop turned private investigator Cass Raines gets the job done in this page-turning Chicago set novel from award-winning author Tracy Clark. 15-year-old Ramona has run away from her foster home. Her biological mother, Lisa Evans, is a recovering addict who's determined to make up for her mistakes if Cass can help find her daughter. The police are on the search, but Cass has sources closer to the streets and a network of savvy allies. Yet it seems Ramona doesn't want to be found, and Cass soon begins to understand why. Ramona is holding secrets dark enough to kill her, and anyone who helps her may be fair game. So Tracy, tell us about that very intriguing new entry in the Catherine series.
That sounded pretty good, didn't it? No, it's just a standard PI novel. This is Cass's fourth case, I think. And she is out to find this 15-year-old girl in the middle of a Chicago winter. Nothing about that is going to be easy for her. She is sort of halfway through this journey when she discovers that other people or other forces are also looking for Ramona. And now it becomes a race to see who finds her first. And hopefully nobody ends up dead who's on the right side of the law there. So sort of a cat and mouse sort of a thing. Think it turned out pretty well. And Chicago Winters features pretty prominently in it. So that's a special kind of experience. And I hope I could sort of spread that around to the entire reading world. So enjoy.
And a good time to read it is during a Chicago summer, you know,
exactly.
When, or as far away from winter as, yeah.
When it's months away.
Right. So, okay, first of all, Tracy's drink. I'm just going to use, sorry, it's Nekesa's Coca-Cola, but just, I didn't really put gin in it, guys, because you would not want to see me doing this show if I had. No. Tracy, it sounds like, so in this entry in Runner, it sounds like there's family drama and the police procedural stuff. And is that typical for the series? Can you talk a little bit about how those sort of forces collide?
Yes, there are also always layers for this. So we have Cass's case, whatever that is, from book to book, but we also have her personal dramas and sort of attachments that she sort of has to deal with. She sort of had a complicated childhood, so she's not one of those touchy-feely kind of people, but she has this sort of acquired family that she has sort of cobbled together. Best friends, the waitress at the diner, people that she sort of pulled in to sort of be that family that she didn't have growing up. So we have it on two levels. She's looking for this runaway. She's also dealing with a returning father who wants to sort of cobble together some kind of relationship with her after 23 years. And she's got her cast of friends that are sort of staying close, oftentimes too close for her benefit. So, you know, so she's got all these sort of itchy things going on, which is kind of fun to sort of play with as a writer, to sort of dig deep and sort of figure out ways that you can sort of turn the screws and make them as your characters as uncomfortable as you can possibly make them. And so she's got a lot of that going on, a lot of things sort of picking at her that she has to deal with, in addition to trying to find a kid. So I think it's sort of fun and entertaining and sort of intriguing, really, to see how deep you can go with her, how much you can mess with her, and sort of just see what happens.
Yeah, I do too. And I always think it's funny what suspense and thriller and mystery writers think of as fun. Like, how deep can we mess with them? I think it's kind of fun to, and I heartily agree. So as the winner and the nominee of some of the biggest mystery awards in the business, do you feel like some of what you're talking about now with that layering is a part of the genre kind of, you know, growing and expanding and burgeoning? Like, has the mystery genre sort of grown to encompass some other kinds of, do you know what I'm getting at here? Because your series sounded like, even from the other entries in it, as if there is always these layers and the depth.
Well, I think that's more fun than just having it on the surface, right? Just sort of getting to the depths of a character and finding out who they are and what makes them tick. I think the best mysteries, or the most interesting mysteries for me, are the ones where you get all of these layers together. So you not only get what they do, but who they are, what they get right, what they don't get right, where they have their blind spots and where they have to expand and grow and maybe pull back a little bit. So all of that all of those elements are wonderful. It's sort of like a wonderful stew that you sort of put together, and you just sort of stir it. Sometimes quickly, sometimes very slowly, but all those elements coming together, I think, sort of add to the plot.
Yeah, I agree. And it's neat how that character adds to the plot, like you're saying. So let's touch a little bit, because you did mention this, the traumatic past. You go to some very dark places. You know, I think mystery readers and thriller fans are coming to the book for the same reason. But tell us a little bit as a writer what that's like and how you do that.
Well, when we start out from book one, she's sort of, we find her at her worst possible spot. All right. The worst thing that can ever happen to a homicide police officer has happened to her. And that's where we meet her. And I did that intentionally because I wanted her to sort of have a tremendous wound as I sort of carried her from book to book. So she starts off at that most difficult spot. The worst thing has happened, and she has to figure out now either how to go forward or remain that's where she is, whether she grows or doesn't. And that wound, that trauma, that carries through to book 2, 3, and 4. She learns how to sort of deal with it a little bit. I don't think most people, in real people, sort of make gigantic jumps as to who they are or how they sort of process things. You learn little by little. And she is learning little by little how to sort of put that away, move forward and deal with it, and sort of expand a little bit. So I think that's a really wonderful journey for a character to be on, to sort of come at the lowest point, figure out how to sort of dig yourself out of that hole. Whether or not you do, some characters don't. This one, as my main character, sort of has to get out of that hole. So she gets out, and then she sort of limps away, and then we have to learn what she's made of. So I did that intentionally, sort of habits where we could sort of carry her through from book to book, learning a little bit, sliding back a little bit, as most real people do. So I think it's all very interesting. I'm really excited about it. Like sort of messing with her, as I said before. So it's not going to be easy for her. Wonderfully.
Yeah, wonderfully. And then what about some of the dark places in Runner itself? You deal with, there's foster care thread, there's, you deal with some topical, timely kind of issues. What I said I was going to ask each of you guys about research. Is there research involved? And also, again, going to the dark, topical, timely issues of our day. Tell us about that.
I do just enough research that I know what I'm talking about. So for Runner, she's a runaway. So I had to sort of dive a little bit into DCFS and the system of runaways and throwaways and resources that are available for those children once they're out on the street. So I did a little bit, just enough that I knew how the system worked, and then just enough that I could sort of kink it a little bit and sort of take it off in another direction. And then I sort of let my imagination go and sort of told the story as to how it sort of might progress if the worst possible thing happened. So just enough to sort of know how it works and how I can sort of kink it up, and then to go from there. I don't like to do a lot of research. I'm writing a PI novel. I mean, Seamus, I mean, it's just a little gumshoe, just sort of running around. You don't have to do that much, but just to know, just enough to know what you're talking about, and then sort of let your imagination go. Anything other than that is like writer math, and then my brain sort of explodes and I can't do it. So just enough to go. Yeah.
Is throwaway a term in the industry?
Yes, there is a difference. There's people, there were those children who run away intentionally, and those who are sort of thrown out of their homes for whatever reasons. Both of them, of course, end up on the street at the same spot. And then, of course, the resources have to kick in. Hopefully, you can sort of catch some of those children back and keep them from going over the edge. And some you sort of slip through the cracks. So it's a big problem.
Fascinating. Okay, so Rogue Reads listeners, we have been talking with Nekesa Afia about Dead Girls and Tracy Clark about Runner, and now we are going to move on to Paul Doiron, who writes one of the series that I can honestly say has been inspirational to me. Paul, first of all, am I pronouncing it right? My French is not good.
You're Frenchifying it more than you need to.
Say it for me.
Doiron.
Doiron. Okay. I was just trying to be pretentious. Paul is the USA Today bestselling author of the Mike Bowditch mystery series set in the Maine woods. I love books set in woods. His first book won the Barry Award and the Strand Critics Award and was nominated for an Edgar for Best First Novel. His short story, Rabbit, was a finalist for the 2019 Edgar. And Paul is editor emeritus of Down East, the magazine of Maine, and a registered Maine guide specializing in fly fishing. So now the borders are opening up. We can travel again. If anybody wants to learn fly fishing, I guess, I don't know if that's your business on the side. Let's talk about Dead by Dawn. I will read you the description, but can honestly say again, this will not do it justice. Paul's going to talk to us more. This is the 12th in the best-selling series. Mike is called to investigate the suspicious drowning of a wealthy professor. His eccentric daughter-in-law insists the man was murdered. The accusation leads Mike to a sinister local family. But when his Jeep flies into the river and unknown armed assailants on snowmobiles chase him through the wilderness, the investigation turns into a fight for survival. As Mike faces a night-long battle to stay alive, he must dissect the hours leading up to the ambush and solve two riddles. Which one of these people wants him dead, and what has he done to incur their wrath? So again, a touch of winter. We're going to see. We're in the midst of summer. We can deal with snow. And please tell us about the Dead by Dawn, the 12th.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's every book in the series so far has been set in a different month of the year, and I had done every one except for December. So this is my Christmas mystery, and it's probably one of the most violent of the whole series. The description of it's interesting because what's unique about the book for me is that it's not chronological in the sense of that description, in that there are two timelines that alternate chapter to chapter. You first meet Mike in this book in the present tense in the piece I'm going to be reading in a few minutes, and then it's flashing back and forth while he's trying to stay alive in this frozen river first, and then he's being shot at and chased, and it's also kind of moving chronologically through the day, which he didn't expect to be anything special. I mean, he never expected that he was going to be in for the worst night of his life, or that this drowning that he's investigating, which he thinks was just a drowning initially, is going to lead to somebody trying so single-mindedly to kill him, and it's a very formidable opponent that he's up against, or opponents that he's not sure in this book, and so I'm trying to. What was such an interesting challenge for me with this book was sort of dolloping out information in these two different timelines and tying them together so that if everything was sort of flowing naturally without you just wanting to stay with one timeline. Whether or not I succeeded is up for everybody else to to tell me, but it was a neat challenge.
Yeah, I'm sure you did succeed, but tell us a little more. And then I'm going off script now, but tell us a little more about how you did that. And, was it, I've heard of authors sometimes having Post-its for each independent story, and they're really, how did you make sure to stay on track and then braid them together?
Oh boy, it
Sorry.
wasn't quite, no, it wasn't quite as structured as that. I knew essentially what were going to be plot points along the way, and tried to just intuit. The problem was kind of, as I said, providing enough information along the way rather than all at once, so that you were being, you're learning while he's learning, and on the other timeline where he's trying to stay alive, people, somebody pops up from the day, initially that he thinks is the person who's trying to kill him, and this is all taking place. It takes place in the course of a single day, a single night, and which was another kind of fun challenge, because everything else I'd done up to this point was, was over several days or whatever. I mean,
Weeks,
I had a funny comment years ago from a reader. She said, what I love about your books is that they're all the same, but they're all different. and I thought, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going for. I mean,
Same,
I never want to write the same book twice. I always want to do something in each book that challenges me, whether it's structurally or point of view, characters, on the other hand, I'm aware that I'm writing a series with a recurring narrator. I mean, he's the same. Each of the books is in the first person. It has to sound like him, although, the Mike that you meet in the first book is much more callow, and I've tried to work on having his diction, change over the course of the series, so he sounds more mature. So the style changes too, and that's been fun.
Yeah. So wow. So Paul is talking about Dead by Dawn, and there's a couple of really interesting points. One is the compressed timeline, which I did notice immediately in reading about the book that was going to be a thing. Also, just being at this book point, and I think sometimes of Mike as a reacher for the woods, reacher Jack. So I promised I would ask a research question. I think I'm going to jump to that, which is obviously you have the wilderness experience. You're a guide. What about the research, though, from Mike's profession and his knowledge of the outdoors and all? How much of that is just who you are and you have it? How much of that is effortful? And
well, for each book, there's sort of 3 different levels of research that I end up doing. I mean, I start with the stuff that I just know from personal experience. I mean, I write this book. This series is set in the state of Maine. I've lived here more or less my whole life. I know the Maine outdoors really well. Mike gets hypothermia in this book. I'm ashamed to say that I've gotten hypothermia, and you don't want to get it. So there's lots of things from my own life that I know from, I can tell you what a river looks like in December as the ice is forming versus, March where it's breaking up, that kind of thing. But then there's always, because these are crime novels, I mean, there's always the sort of the law and order side of things that require me talking to game wardens and, the state crime lab sometimes, or state police. Lots of different people I've dealt with that way, and that's always fun too. And then there's just sort of like the setting pieces, and or certain kinds of characters and things, and that's just pandemic actually really challenged me on that level, because I couldn't go and hang out at a cheap McDonald's and sort of watch who was coming through the door and like take notes about what they were wearing and say, oh yeah, that look is perfect for this character or whatever it was. It was just like I had to, it was just drawing on years of research past.
Yeah, we could do a whole show on how the pandemic affected those of you who had books. And Nekesa, my hat is off to you with the first novel out during this time. Let me say real quickly that Mike, our reacher for the woods, enjoys coffee with a molasses donut. I wish I had those molasses donuts here.
They're excellent.
I know. I'm going to have to plan a trip up to Maine. So last question, and then I can't wait to talk to Riley. One of the things I love about the series is the way some of the chasms and some of the nuances of the state are exposed on the page. This one, which, I cannot wait to read, seems like it might deal with some issues of wealth and sort of disparity of class conscious. Am I right? And can you speak a little bit to that in Dead by Dawn?
Sure. Maine is a state with, like many states, that has a tremendous wealth disparity. All of our wealth is concentrated along the coast. We have the most second homes in the country per capita. So, this really is vacation land. And then the inland part of the state is really poor. There's aspects of Appalachia in rural Maine, mountainous Maine. It sort of just leaps over the rest of of the Northeast, and then you find it up here. So it's something I've always been dealing with to one degree or another. I suppose what's different from this is that a lot of times I try to highlight a subculture in Maine, because, when you write about a region in the national imagination, right, Maine is lighthouses and lobsters and things, and it's a big state. It's not a big state in compared to California or Texas, but it's as big as the rest of New England combined. And it does have a lot of different populations that are that I've written about in the past that are really disparate. I mean, northernmost Maine, you have both these French speakers who were originally there, but you also have all of these. There's almost a Midwestern accent because of all of the Swedes that came over to farm and stuff. And I don't want to go on. I want to hear Riley, but that's probably good for me now.
No, but it's good. And it is one of the beautiful things about the series. And so Dead by Dawn, everybody. Thank you, Paul. So Riley Sager, I've been a fan from the very beginning. Let me read
go way back.
From way back. Riley's biography. Riley Sager's first novel, Final Girls, was a national and international bestseller, published in more than 24 countries, and the winner of the ITW Thriller Award for Best Hardcover. His subsequent novels, The Last Time I Lied, Lock Every Door, and Home Before Dark, were instant New York Times bestsellers. And as we've all heard, Riley is even more powerful and going to take over the world soon. His latest, Survive the Night. Let me just read this. Yes, thank you. And beautiful cover. A girl, a killer, a car. Together, they speed along a highway in the dead of night, each wondering what the other is thinking and what might happen further down the road. Engaged in a game of cat and mouse, both know that the only way to win is to stay alive until dawn. So interesting, like along the compressed timeline themes. And I would love you to tell us some more than that description provides about the book, Riley.
Yeah, sure. It's about a college student named Charlie, and she is a movie fanatic. She's obsessed with movies, and her roommate are just like, it's 1991, but they act like, it's the 50s. And then her roommate is murdered by a man known as the campus killer. And Charlie is just so overcome with grief and guilt because she was the last person to see her roommate alive. She's like, okay, I need to leave campus right now. And in the early 90s, as someone who went to college in the early 90s, one of the ways to get from one place to another is to use the campus ride board. And that's where people say, I'm going here. And someone else says, I'm going here too. Let's ride together and we'll split the cost of gas. She meets a man named Josh who says, hey, I'm going to Ohio as well. Let's do this drive together. And so Charlie agrees. And very early on in their trip from New Jersey to Ohio, she starts to get a weird vibe from Josh and starts to think that maybe he's not entirely telling the truth. And in fact, he might be the campus killer. And so it's two people in a car speeding down a highway in the dead of night, wondering how much each other knows about one another and what are they going to do about this. And it's pretty much told in real time. And that was something, my previous book, Home Before Dark, was 2 timelines. It was a book, literally a full book within the book, told 25 years apart. And the book within the book was like the unreliable narrator. And it was just so complex and that it about destroyed me, the writing of it. Like I was just this brainless puddle by the time it was finished. And so for my next book, I was like, I really just wanted to do something like 2 people in a car. And that's it. Like, that's pretty much like what I wanted to do. And that brought its own set of challenges, which I was not prepared for, but I completely discovered like during the writing of the book.
Yeah, so one setting and one night kind of thing. And yes, I remember the novel within a novel aspect and wondering if that was very difficult to pull off.
It was so hard, so hard.
No, I can imagine the puddle quality to it. So it's a setup that I think, I mean, I don't want to gender it too much, but I think every woman can identify with that. And certainly viscerally, I felt the fear of that, and not just because I also went to college in the early 90s. So my question, I guess, my first question was that Survive the Night deals with some themes that I think we've come to sort of count on from you, women, their vulnerability, how they repair their strength, that kind of thing. But I also felt like it was a departure in a way, and not just because of the timeline, and I didn't even do that whole comparison thing. Maybe in some ways that there's a cat and a mouse, but you're not sure cat versus mouse at different times kind of thing. So I'm wondering if you could speak to the element of that women in vulnerability, and to the extent that this is the same but different, as Paul so nicely put it, or Paul's fan, or, you know, really a departure.
Well, one of the things, and it's like, I don't make a habit of reading Goodreads reviews, but someone on Goodreads like said that of my books, like my main characters are like these damaged women who discover spines of titanium and learn to fight back. And I was so proud of like that, you know, I was like, oh my God, yes, this is what I intend. Like, so my characters do sort of tend to fit a type where they do not realize how strong they really are. And then they're just pushed to such extremes where this, you know, fighter emerges. And that's sort of the case with Charlie. The wrinkle with her is that I mentioned she's really into movies. She's had a really, really tough life. And one of her coping mechanisms is to sort of pretend these things are a movie. She calls them like the movies in her mind. And so she just sort of like, you know, is when things get too much for her, she just kind of like mentally shuts down and she dreams like this, you know, movie fantasy scenario. And it really, really messes with her understanding sometimes of what is real and what is not. And when you're in a car alone with someone and they catch on that this is a thing with you, are they manipulating you? Are they telling the truth? And so it's not just a cat and mouse game with her, with Josh, it's a cat and mouse game with her own self. And
that's even better. Yeah.
And speeding down a highway, there's really no escape short of jumping out of a car. And like, you know, I said it in 1991 for a reason, because I knew there's no cell phones, no GPS. Like you are at the mercy of a payphone if you can stop and get to one. So it really just sort of, I wanted to ratchet up the tension that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's amazing how the world changing has affected this genre of ours. And if you go back,
cell phones have ruined things for us, guys. Like it really has made things so much harder.
Go to Maine. There's lots of no signal in Maine, right?
Yes.
Wouldn't Mike say so?
Or go to the 20s.
Or the 20s, that's right. Nekesa did not have to deal with Twitter. Riley's favorite drink? Coffee and gin, not together.
And I feel so like I should have brought.
Should have had a little glass to raise.
Like
All right, no, that's fine. Okay, so fascinating. I'm going to flip-flop then the two questions I had for you, because I think you are speaking to this already to a degree. I wanted to ask you, I see your work as sort of, in some ways at the forefront, really, you know, moving that exploding subgenre of kind of domestic, intimate stage suspense to the huge and the violent. I didn't say that as well as I had it in my notes, but I was looking at you instead of reading. But can you speak to something about the genre, the part of the genre where you feel your work is falling and the explosion of that? Why exploding now? And how does Riley Sager help that happen?
Well, I like to think that I've been called a thriller writer, I've been called a horror writer, I've been called a mystery writer, and I like being sort of this unclassifiable thing, because I don't like labels. Like I because we all write mysteries or we all write thrillers, but like they're novels. And I think like I'm proud that my books say just a novel on the cover, because it's like this, it's sort of shrugging off the label that might be put on me by a bookseller or, or Amazon's or something. But I really think that the world is changing, and people are wanting stories about maybe the little guy, or in my case is the little women who are just like, life is just hard on them and society is hard on them, and and just learning, I am bigger than this, I'm stronger than this. And, sometimes it involves, knives and and
Yeah.
poison and cars and stuff. So it's really like, I think about like people sort of taking back ownership of their lives.
Yeah. I think you said it exactly what I wanted to say, which is sort of every woman, every person, and on the stage of their life kind of thing. So thank you. All right, don't get mad at me for this last question. I really want to ask it. Rogue Reads, we get very real and raw. I want to know if there's pressure associated with that whole instant New York Times bestseller. I want to know if this, stage of things does it feel like a different, like part of your career? Does it come with any downside, or is it just like, wow, I wrote another book and I'm so excited for it to reach a wide audience?
It's a little bit of both. It is like, never in my entire existence did I think that I would have like New York Times bestseller, like, associated with me. And that comes with a certain set of expectations from readers and from your publisher. And so like, I can't just be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write, a Regency romance next. Like, I need to really, there's a bit of strategy involved. And a lot of it is like, okay, what do I feel like doing now that's different from my previous book? But also there is this, okay, what's a really good hook that's going to sell?
Yeah.
And so there is like a new, bigger business aspect to it than I was expecting, and that I think a lot of people don't quite realize is part of like sustaining a career as a best-selling author.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. And all of our authors, the challenges, and with a series and a long running series and a brand new series and a series that goes to some topical, timely places. I mean, there are so many challenges in this business. And just at this stage of the evening, I would like to thank Nekesa and Tracy and Paul and Riley for sharing. So honestly, and now we will move into the phase of Rogue Reads that I think some of our listeners most look forward to. Anybody who would like to read a short excerpt, and I always say, like, don't read the first half of your book. Like, we're as good as it is, we want to read it on the page. But I would love to hear an excerpt. And if somebody doesn't want to read, we have certainly had guests who were like, believe me, you don't want me to read this book. I have more questions that I'd be happy to ask. They may be real and raw, so I'll put that out there as a temptation to read. But if you would like to read, let's circle back around again. And Nekesa, do you want to read a short excerpt from Dead Dead Girls?
I would love to read a short excerpt from Dead Dead Girls. I've got it all ready to go here. And I am reading from the first chapter, which is one of my favorite scenes. It has absolutely nothing to do with the mystery, but you'll get to see Lou vibe. It's an adult Lou, and she's having the time of her life. Okay. Chapter 1, Summer 1926. Something about the booming band made Louise Lloyd feel alive. Really, truly alive in a way she'd thought impossible. Sweat rolled down her back, down her face, sticking her hair to her cheeks and her red lips. She didn't bother to brush away the strands as she concentrated on dancing. The strap of her dress fell, revealing her shoulder, and she put it back into place. She was panting for breath, her heart beating wildly. She let her muddy hazel eyes flicker shut for just one moment, taking one beat to her set. The Zodiac was the hottest club in the West 50s. Everything about it was the best. It had high, sweeping ceilings, gleaming dance floors, and the best band in the city. The bandstand was big enough for an orchestra. The band itself, however, was 7 pieces, and there was a different singer each night, all supposed to become the next big thing. Tonight's singer was a woman with a soulful voice and skin darker than Louise's. She was barely dressed, wearing a tiny showgirl costume. The lights shone on her, gleaming off her long arms and legs. She managed to make eye contact with everyone in the club, presiding over them as they danced. A small smile settled on her face as she clutched the microphone stand. The bar had been shoved into the corner, almost as an afterthought. There was no table or chairs in the Zodiacs. The rare non-dancers stood by the wall and watched. No one came to the Zodiac to sit. The music bounced off the ceiling like some unbridled animal in heat. It was impossible to speak over it. The band was playing a song that Louise particularly loved. And the best part was that, for the right price, the owner didn't care what color a person was. secrets were made and kept at the Zodiac. It was a place where men could dance with men and women could dance with women. Louise needed a place that was discreet and had a good band. The Zodiac was that place.
You're right. That totally puts us there. That's very, very beautiful and evocative. Thank you, Nekesa. Do you want to hold up can you hold up your beautiful cover one more time?
Of course.
It's very, it's almost like folk arty, like stylized somehow. I don't know if tell us really just quickly, thank you for that excerpt. And what was the process of the cover like for you?
Okay, so the cover process was actually amazing. So I didn't think I'd get any like input or anything. I thought they'd just be like, here, this is your cover, enjoy. But no, so I got 2 different sketches. And then when I chose a sketch, they were like, here are these 5 different color combos. And then I went with blue because I like blue. I'm really bad at making choices. So I had to like get my like family group chat in on it. And they're like, let's do this one. And my mom was like really gunning for a different color combo. And then I went with blue because that was my choice.
It's nice to be the author sometimes. It's very cool. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so Tracy, I would love to hear an excerpt. Do you want to read one from Runner or?
Yeah, sure. I can read a little
Great.
bit from it.
Wonderful.
This picks up, Cass has been out all day looking for this 15-year-old. She has come up empty. She's rattled every door and she can't find the kid. So she sort of goes to her favorite diner, just sort of lick her wounds for a little bit, and she finds a surprise there. So this is chapter 2. Help you? It was a slow, lazy, drawly voice, not Muna's. My head snapped up and I stared into the face of a bony woman with heavy eye makeup and flame-red hair pulled into a neat bun. She looked bored out of her skull, tired of the BS, a woman not to be messed with, now or ever. Who are you? I asked. It shot out of my mouth before I had time to filter it. This was Deeks, my spot. I'd expected Muna. I looked around the place as if she might be hiding under a table, waiting to pop out and yell surprise. I turned back to the stranger with the bun, wary. The woman frowned, tapped a stubby pencil against the nameplate on her chest, which I hadn't bothered to even pay attention to at first glance. Her name was Aggie. She blinked, slowly, like a sloth might. I'm new, she said. Started yesterday. You ordering? Where's Muna? I hadn't expected the question to come out with quite so much panic in it. I mean, it wasn't like Muna and I were related or dating. We didn't go out shopping or clubbing, but this was my spot. She was the waitress I'd come to expect to be in it when I got here. We were friends in a compatible acquaintance kind of way, which was why I was here, in this diner, in 6 below zero weather, when I'd just eaten lunch with a retired cop in a divey restaurant across town. Aggie's sleepy eyes held mine. Taking the day off, but if you're worried I can't cover a diner table, put your mind to rest. This isn't my first rodeo. Been slinging hash for now on 30 years. Her beady eyes narrowed. You're that detective she told me about. Extra whipped cream on your chocolate shakes, no butter on your pancakes. You always sit in this back booth with your back to the wall. I said nothing, just stared at her, not liking any of it. Gangsters do that too, Aggie said. They face the door so they can see who comes gunning for them. And you don't like change. She says it throws you off. I know people like that. It's not healthy. You eating or just sitting? Muna also said sometimes you just come and sit. If this is one of those sitting times, I'll leave you to it. If it isn't, she left her sentence hanging. I handle change just fine, I said. One Aggie brow lifted. Doesn't look like you're dealing too good with this one. We could test it, you know. You could sit up front at a table instead of holding yourself up back here like a hermit crab. Like an experiment. I studied her, getting only a deadpan expression back. Aggie waited for a response as life went on around us. I changed my mind right then about the tea or the cocoa and got up from the booth to leave. I've got to go, I said. Aggie shrugged, took a step back. Muna said you'd get up and leave. It takes you a while to warm to people. I know people like that, too. Doesn't twist my knickers in a knot. Like I said, I worked all kinds of places, dealt with all kinds. Nothing phases old Aggie. I picked up my newspaper. Young still work here, I asked. She nodded. Yep. And Deke, he's in the kitchen. He still owns this place? Yep. I slid my hat on, grabbed my gloves. Only a little change then, nothing new except for Aggie. I guess I could handle that. Nice to meet you. I said it quick, not completely sure it was the truth, then brushed past her, headed for the door. I'll look after your booth for you, she said. Right, thanks. I stepped out into the cold.
I don't think I will ever not be able to see the character blinking slowly like a sloth. That is such a great, great image. Thank you, Tracy. Do you want to hold up Runner one more time so we can all see the cover?
There you
I know
go.
I saw some people saying they'd already ordered or read. Beautiful.
That's wonderful.
Do you want to tell us about your cover process? Or I never want to put people on the hook because I saw in the chat, Lisa Black commented that her cover experience is different, but.
Well, as each book sort of gets there, they sort of ask you for your ideas, right? You tell them what the story's about. They sort of ask if you have any ideas of what you might want your cover to be. Other than the fact that she sort of ends up at this sort of interesting place at the end, that's the only image that I had in my head about what the cover should be. So they went back with those ideas and came back with this cover. I was completely happy with it, so we're good to go. I've never had a bad experience cover-wise, so fingers crossed that'll hold.
Yeah, great. Paul, I am just itching to know if you will read an excerpt from Dead by Dawn.
I'd love to.
Great.
And I will read the first, 5 or 6 paragraphs, which should be all you need. The hill is steep here, and there's no guardrail above the river. I think I'm being careful, keeping a light touch on the wheel, feathering the brakes, but then I come around the curve and see the spiked objects scattered across the asphalt in my headlights. They look like barbaric versions of children's jacks, or medieval caltrops laid on battlefields to maim horses, except that these hunks of metal have been welded from box nails and placed here for the malign purpose of blowing out automobile tires. The front wheels of the Jeep run over the first of them before I can react, and the sound is like 2 muskets being fired in tandem. The wolf dog in his enormous crate in the rear lets loose a strangled yelp. And now the back tires are bursting too, and the steering wheel tugs one way, then the other, and when I pump the brake pedal, nothing happens because I'm going too fast. I am over the edge before I can exhale. I feel the drop in my stomach. The high beams touch the frozen river a microsecond before the vehicle itself does, crashing into and through the ice with such violence that the engine block lurches under the hood. The airbag bursts like an outsized puffball in my face. My lungs let go of their oxygen, and icy water rushes up around my legs to pierce my groin. The cold delivers a body blow, the assault fiercest upon my heart. My breathing becomes rapid fire, insufficient to my lungs' needs. Because fear moves faster than thought, I experience the panicked recognition of what has happened, of what is happening, as scalding heat along my scalp. Then neurons flash inside my brain, and I am fully awake to my predicament. My first thought is of Shadow trapped inside his kennel. The danger to me registers as a secondary concern, except as a scolding voice inside my head. Bowditch, you idiot. I'll stop there.
No, we do not need more than 5 or 6 paragraphs. Yes, please hold up Dead by Dawn a little higher. And yeah, that's the scene, right? The glass-like ice. Yeah, I know. Nekesa asks, Nekesa, who pets every dog she sees, I was worried about Shadow too. No spoilers, but
he's
Nekesa,
actually.
you can read it, Nekesa. I would dare to say.
And one of the things you learn when you write about dogs in crime novels is you're not allowed to kill them. People,
you're in good hands with Paul. He has real respect for
crime novels. You just can't kill a dog.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say I don't want to, I have to leave.
No spoilers, but I would say everybody's
here.
Yeah. Yes, I hear a lot of that from mystery readers, actually, like that they could rather see a baby killed than a dog or a cat. Thank you, Paul. I mean, You know, so that, I mean, that's just it. You put nature on the page, and also so viscerally. Rogue Reads had Jeffrey Deaver on last show or a couple shows back, and he started with an avalanche. This reminded me of that, just that visceral power of nature against human and animal. It is what you do so well. So thank you very much. Riley, would you like to read an excerpt from Survive the Night? We would love to hear it, if you would.
I would, yes.
Great.
This is Charlie, and she looks back on her meeting with Josh. So this is the first chapter. Staying isn't an option. That's why Charlie has agreed to get into a car with a perfect stranger. She's promised Robbie, promised herself as well, that she'll bolt if anything about the situation strikes her as shady. One can't be too careful, not these days, not after what happened to Maddie. Charlie has already steeled herself for flight, mentally listing all the scenarios in which she should run. If the car looks battered and or has tinted windows. If someone else is inside, no matter the excuse. If he seems too eager to depart, or, on the flip side, not hurried enough. She's sworn to Robbie, to herself, to Maddie, whom she still sometimes talks to, even though she's now 2 months in the grave, that a single shiver of apprehension will send her running back to the dorm. She doubts it'll come to that. Because he seems nice, friendly. Definitely not the type of guy who'd do the things that had been done to Maddie and the others. Besides, he's not a stranger. Not completely. They'd met once before, in front of the ride board in the campus commons, dwarfed by that wall of flyers from students desperate to get home and those eager to drive them there in exchange for gas money. Charlie had just put up her own flyer, carefully printed, her phone number placed on each meticulously cut tab, when he appeared at her side. "You're going to Youngstown?" he said, his gaze flicking from her to the flyer and back again. Charlie hesitated before responding. A post-Maddie habit. She never willingly engaged with people she didn't know, not until she had a grasp on their intentions. He could have been making small talk or trying to pick her up. Unlikely, but not entirely out of the realm of possibility. It was how she met Robbie, after all. She'd been pretty once, before guilt and grief had sunk their claws into her. "Yeah," she eventually said, after his gaze returned to the ride board, making her decide he was there for the same reason she was. "That where you're heading?" "Akron," he said. Hearing that made Charlie stand at attention. Not quite Youngstown, but close enough. A quick stop on the way to his final destination. "Rider or driver?" she asked. "Driver." Was hoping to find someone willing to split the cost of gas. "I could be that someone," she said, letting him look her over, giving him the chance to decide if she was the type of person he'd want to spend hours alone in a car with. She knew what kind of vibe she gave off, an angry dourness that would have made guys like him tell her to smile more, if she hadn't looked like she'd punched them for doing so. Doom and gloom hovered over her like a rain cloud. Charlie studied him right back. He appeared to be a few years older than the typical student, although that could have been a product of his size. He was big, tall, broad-shouldered, square-jawed. Wearing jeans and an Oliphant University sweatshirt, he looked, Charlie thought, like the heroes of a 40s comedy, or the villain in an 80s one. She assumed he was a grad student like Robbie, one of those people who got a taste for college life and decided they never wanted to leave. But he had nice hair, something Charlie still noticed even though she let her own grow limp and scraggly. Great smile, too, which she flashed when he said, "Possibly. When were you looking to leave?" Charlie gestured to her flyer, and the 4 letters placed all caps in the dead center of the page. ASAP.
Riley, you're very good at getting into the heads of not just the fears, but the thoughts that women use to assess the
I had help with a beta reader, like one of my best friends forever reads everything I write. And in this one especially, because she was, a young woman in the early 90s, and she was like,
yeah,
this is what I would have thought in this situation. So that was a huge help.
Yeah, but give yourself some credit too. And thank you for that very gripping reading. I think it'd be hard to, read the part of the book that you just did and not need to know that quintessential Riley Sager upending, turning of the, but I won't say any more for fear of spoilers. So first of all our authors, thank you, Nekesa, Paul, Tracy, and Riley. I want to give a quick plug for July Rogue Reads next month. There is, if you have not met Andrea Bartz's work, definitely look it up now. We have a secret surprise super guest that I'm not even going to say the name of, and then 2 others as usual. I hope everyone listening tonight will turn in for July Rogue Reads. But also, Chris, you'll let us know if there are any, questions coming for the authors. And I would love to close out the night with a question for each author. We'll mix up the alphabetical and start with Riley. And I'd love to know what challenge did you face and what triumph did you face with each of these new releases, or in Nekesa's case, her debut release? What particular challenge and triumph did you face with Survive the Night, Riley?
I think the challenge and the reward was like the same. Writing during a pandemic. This whole thing was written during a damn pandemic, and I still can't believe that I managed and we all managed to still continue writing things when it was the last thing on my mind. It was really hard to concentrate. And so to now sit here with this finished book that was entirely written during quarantine is weird. It's so weird.
Yeah. And also kind of amazing is that we made it to this point in the night without really talking about the pandemic. So that says something, I think, about our time. But yeah, absolutely. Even just you going through the publication cycle, as if there really wasn't out there when we were inside, is kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. We're this is my second book that's come out during a pandemic.
Right. Okay, so hats off to you. Second, yeah, that's right, because you had a summer. Yeah, oh my gosh. And crazy that it went out on that long. Okay, let's not go down that rabbit hole. Paul, challenge and triumph with Dead by Dawn.
The challenge for me was I had this idea for these 2 timelines, and I always say this about a book. I feel like there's a point in every book where sometimes it's sooner in the book and sometimes it's later in the book, where as I'm writing it, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it off. That whatever idea I have, whether it's ambitious or just a more streamlined book, and eventually I hit that hurdle. I get over the hurdle, and I honestly exhale. I mean, it's okay, I can see it. It's actually going to be a book. I could turn it in, on deadline, and it's real. With this one, the challenge, as I said, I knew I wanted to weave these things back and forth, and that moment of realizing that this was going to work came about 9 months into the writing. So, it was a long time. And but then when it did, it was one of those few experiences I've had where it was this is the only possible ending of this book, which is what I think we always go for, right? That's the great books always have one ending, and not that mine's a great book, but it felt like I did it. I did what I set out to do, and whether or not, as I say, other people agree, we'll see. But,
well, first of all, I am positive Dead by Dawn is a great book because the whole series is great. But yeah, I like that idea of writing to the only possible ending and yet not knowing it for the amount of time it takes to gestate a human life. That's really to not even. I'm going to ask one quick follow-up question because I didn't realize this. I didn't put this together about the Mike Bowditch series. Are you going to go back to the beginning of the calendar, or how are you going to now that you've done all 12 months?
Yeah, when I was first starting out, I had this idea, I'll do 12 books. Each book will be set in a different month of the year. And here I find myself with a contract for a 13th book. So either I have to invent a month or just kind of start back from the beginning. But actually, I'm doing some things differently, and will be, going forward. But for people who are worried that I'm going to stop the series. No, I'm not going to stop the series. I really, the thing is that I like the character a lot, and I feel like there's so much more I want to do with him. I just, I don't want to be the writer who is just, phoning it, we won't name names, but who's been writing about the same character forever. And you just sort of feel like, okay. But, I'm having fun, and I hope the readers are too.
No, he keeps evolving. And congratulations on that 13th. And also, you're welcome. What I would give you is, in rural Maine, there are 8 months of winter. So I'm sure that gives you some more to play with in the calendar.
Yeah.
Tracy, please tell us the biggest triumph and challenge with Runner.
I guess the biggest challenge is all the same thing. Every book is the same thing. It's just a different mountain that you have to climb. So with Runner, this is just my latest challenge, just sort of getting from the beginning to the middle to the end, and sort of getting all the elements to sort of work in the same direction. I don't outline, so I'm a pantser, which has its own set of challenges. So it's always a sort of a mystification that I sort of get to the end and it's all in one piece. So that's my biggest challenge always. Biggest triumph, I think, was just sort of getting through this pandemic. I didn't have such a difficult time as Riley did. I sort of had a focus moment where you could go out, nobody could come in. So you just sort of had your spot where you could sort of get this story down on paper with no distractions. Sort of living in this sort of a zombie apocalypse sort of a situation. Just sort of barreled in and sort of got it done. So that was the greatest thing. Just sort of breezed through it, hopefully. Climbing these little mountains and challenges, but I sort of got through. I got to the end. I did it. It's finished. Then of course you go back and fix it. But yeah, greatest triumph, greatest challenge.
Yeah, that it's all in one piece, and you are too.
Yep, I made it.
Nekesa, with Dead Girls, greatest challenge and triumph.
The greatest challenge was definitely like, there's parts of this book that are like just so dark, and that's just because racism is still alive, and it's like nothing has changed in like 100 years. So like getting into some of those parts was like really hard for me. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, but then also I have to do this because then it wouldn't be realistic. And then the biggest triumph was obviously signing that 2-book contract, because it is still the greatest moment of my life. And I don't want to make myself cry again, but like, I can't believe I just made up this book and now it's real. And now I get to do this all the time. I get to just make things up and then write them down. And like, people read it and then they like it. And it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah, that is just so amazing, and a heartfelt congratulations from somebody who could never have pulled it off at the beginning like that in a 2-book deal. That's just amazing. You should cry a little, because that's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. No, really. I mean, I think we all can relate to it. I mean, Tracy's saying it's in one piece and I'm in one piece, but to be able to do this thing is it's just a glory. And so I have to say my hat is off to Nekesa with Dead Girls. I hope people out there will pick up the series and get to know Louise Riley Sager with Survive the Night. I hope people will embrace Riley's 4th. It sounds both like what we've come to enjoy and be riveted by, and yet a little different. Paul Doiron with his 12th, Mike Bowditch, Dead by Dawn. Got to see how Mike gets out of that river. And Tracy Clark with Cass Rains and Runner. I can't wait to get to know your character. So thank you all for joining us on Rogue Reads. Thank you, Chris, for making the tech go smoothly. And I hope we will see you all back here, and everybody will discover some great new books